Can you believe the audacity? My daughter-in-law, a woman I once loved like my own, stood there, a smirk playing on her lips, and declared to a young, clearly uncomfortable receptionist, "Don't talk to the old lady. She's just the cleaner," referring to me. My own daughter-in-law, dismissing me as if I were a speck of dust, an insignificant part of the background. My heart, already a fragile thing after years of quiet battles with her, shattered into a million pieces right there in the lobby of a place I had poured my entire life into building. Was I wrong to finally snap? Was I wrong to unleash the full force of a lifetime of resentment and take back what was rightfully mine? Tell me, honestly, would you have done the same thing? My story, the full, raw, and utterly unbelievable truth of it, starts long before that soul-crushing moment in the lobby. It begins with my son, Michael, a kind, gentle soul who was, in many ways, too good for this world. He was my only child, and from the moment he was born, he was my universe. I was a single mother, working tirelessly to build my cleaning business from the ground up, all while raising Michael to be the wonderful man he became. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and we had a dream. My dream, which Michael wholeheartedly embraced, was to build a successful chain of boutique hotels. It started with a tiny, dilapidated motel that I bought with every penny I had, cleaning every room myself, scrubbing toilets, making beds, and greeting every guest with a genuine smile. Michael, even as a teenager, was right there beside me, helping with repairs, managing the front desk, and learning every facet of the business. We called it the Haven, a place where weary travelers could find comfort and peace, and over the years, with our combined sweat and tears, it grew. We opened a second, then a third, each one a testament to our hard work and shared vision. By the time Michael was in his late 20s, we had a thriving, well-respected chain of 7 hotels, and we were planning our 8th. It was a true rags-to-riches story, built on integrity, hard work, and an unwavering commitment to our guests. Then, Sarah entered our lives. Michael met her at a charity gala, and he was instantly smitten. She was beautiful, undeniably so, with a dazzling smile and an air of sophistication that Michael, ever the humble and hard-working man, found captivating. I, too, was initially charmed. She seemed perfect, intelligent, articulate, and she spoke so passionately about her own career and marketing. I remember thinking, finally, Michael has found someone who truly understands him, someone who can be his partner in life and in business. Oh, how wrong I was. The first red flags, subtle at first, began to appear shortly after they were married. Sarah, despite having no experience in hospitality, began to insert herself into the business. Michael, ever the loving husband, indulged her. He started giving her roles, small at first, then larger, even though I gently suggested that she might benefit from learning the ropes before taking on significant responsibilities. She had grand ideas, always focused on modernizing and streamlining, which often meant cutting corners and reducing the personal touch that had made our hotels so beloved. She pushed for cheaper suppliers, for automated check-ins that eliminated personal interaction, and for a complete rebranding that erased our history and replaced it with a sleek, impersonal facade. I tried to voice my concerns, but Michael, blinded by his love, always defended her, saying she was just trying to help, trying to bring the business into the 21st century. I held my tongue, believing that eventually she would see the value in our established methods, or that Michael would recognize the slow erosion of our core values. The real shift, the profound and devastating change, began when Michael was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of cancer. It was a shock that ripped through our lives, tearing at the very fabric of our family. He fought bravely, with Sarah by his side, or so it seemed. During this time, my focus was entirely on my son. I spent every waking moment at the hospital, researching treatments, advocating for him, and simply being there, holding his hand, whispering words of encouragement. The business, while still running, became a secondary concern. This, I now realize, was Sarah's opportunity. While I was consumed with grief and fear, she began to consolidate power. She convinced Michael, in his weakened state, to grant her more authority, claiming it was necessary to keep the business afloat during his illness. He trusted her, he loved her, and he wanted to protect me from the burden. He believed she had his best interests at heart, and, by extension, mine. After Michael passed away, the world felt like it had ended. The light went out of my life, and I floundered, lost in a sea of sorrow. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, was quick to take charge. She orchestrated the funeral, handled all the legalities, and managed the business, or so I thought. I was in too much pain to question anything, too heartbroken to care about balance sheets or executive decisions. I simply existed, a ghost in my own home, haunted by the memory of my son. As the months passed, a slow, creeping realization began to dawn on me. Sarah wasn't just managing the business, she was reshaping it, making it her own. She fired long-term employees, people who had been with Michael and me since the beginning, replacing them with her own acquaintances, many of whom had questionable experience. She sold off 2 of our smaller, but highly profitable, hotels, claiming they were underperforming assets that were dragging down the brand. The money from those sales, she assured me, was being reinvested into modernization efforts for the remaining properties. I never saw any evidence of these reinvestments. The changes she implemented were always about cutting costs, regardless of the impact on guest experience. The high-quality linens were replaced with scratchy, cheap ones. The gourmet coffee in the rooms became instant packets. The fresh flowers in the lobby, a tradition Michael and I had always maintained, disappeared. When I gently questioned these changes, she would become defensive, accusing me of being stuck in the past and resistant to progress. She would remind me that Michael had entrusted her with the business, and that she was merely fulfilling his wishes. One day, I decided to visit one of our flagship hotels, the Grand Haven, the one Michael and I had poured our hearts into. It had always been a place of warmth and elegance, a second home for us. When I walked in, I barely recognized it. The beautiful mahogany reception desk was gone, replaced by a cold, sterile white counter. The cozy lounge area, filled with antique furniture and a roaring fireplace, was now a minimalist, empty space with a few uncomfortable modern chairs. The worst part was the atmosphere. It was no longer a place of comfort and welcome. It felt cold, impersonal, and utterly devoid of the soul Michael and I had instilled in it. I noticed a young woman, a new hire, struggling with a difficult guest. I watched for a moment, then, out of habit, stepped forward to offer assistance, just as I had done countless times over the decades. The guest, frustrated, looked at me, and I offered a calming smile. "Perhaps I can help. Ma'am? What seems to be the trouble?" Before she could answer, Sarah, who had apparently just walked in, swept past me, her eyes narrowed. She didn't even acknowledge my presence to the guest. Instead, she turned to the young receptionist and, in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, uttered those humiliating words, "Don't talk to the old lady. She's just the cleaner." The air went out of my lungs. I felt a flush of heat rise to my face, then a cold dread settle in my stomach. The receptionist looked mortified, the guest looked bewildered, and I just stood there, frozen, the weight of her cruelty pressing down on me. She had stripped me of my title, my legacy, my very identity within the company I had co-founded. She saw me as nothing more than a relic, a piece of furniture to be ignored or swept aside. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The grief, the quiet resentment, the suppressed anger, it all coalesced into a fierce resolve. I was done being the grieving mother, the quiet observer. I was done letting her dismantle everything Michael and I had built. This wasn't just about my pride. It was about Michael's legacy, about the thousands of hours we had poured into these hotels, about the dream we had shared. It was about respect, and she had shown me none. I walked out of that lobby, not in defeat, but with a fire in my belly that had been dormant for too long. I went home, and for the first time in months, I felt clarity. I still held a significant share in the company, a fact Sarah conveniently overlooked, believing she had complete control. But she hadn't accounted for the years of experience, the deep understanding of the hospitality industry, and the sheer grit that had built those hotels in the first place. She hadn't accounted for a mother's fury. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I could continue to let her disrespect me, to destroy my son's legacy, to take everything Michael and I had worked for. Or I could fight back, with every fiber of my being, and reclaim what was rightfully mine. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let it go, or would you have waged war? I spent the next few weeks in a relentless pursuit of knowledge of every detail Sarah had tried to hide. I called my old lawyer, a shrewd, no-nonsense woman who had handled all of our business dealings for decades. She was thrilled to hear from me, and even more so to help me uncover the truth. I dug through old financial statements, employee contracts, and property deeds. I contacted former employees Sarah had unjustly fired, gathering their testimonies. What I uncovered was even worse than I had imagined. Sarah hadn't just been modernizing. She had been systematically siphoning money from the company. The reinvestments were a farce. She had been funneling funds into shell companies she secretly owned, inflating invoices, and using company money for lavish personal expenses, all while the hotels themselves began to falter. The 2 hotels she had sold were sold at drastically undervalued prices to a company owned by her brother, a clear conflict of interest and a massive financial loss for our company. The modernization was a smokescreen for embezzlement and fraud. She had effectively been robbing Michael's legacy, inch by painstaking inch, right under my nose. My grief had made me vulnerable, and she had exploited it ruthlessly. Armed with irrefutable evidence, I scheduled an emergency board meeting. Sarah, still oblivious to my awakening, arrived with her usual air of dismissive confidence. She expected a routine meeting, perhaps to rubber stamp another one of her questionable decisions. She walked in, gave me a perfunctory nod, and took her seat at the head of the table, clearly believing she was in charge. The other board members, a mix of longtime associates and a few newer additions Sarah had brought in, looked uncomfortable. My lawyer sat beside me, a stack of meticulously organized documents in front of her. I began to speak, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging inside me. I started by acknowledging Michael's enduring vision for the Haven hotels, how we had built them with integrity and a commitment to our guests. Then, I methodically laid out my case, presenting the evidence of Sarah's financial misdealings, the undervalued sales, the fraudulent invoices, the misuse of company funds. I showed them the bank statements, the shell company registrations, the testimony from disgruntled former employees. As I spoke, Sarah's confident facade began to crack. Her eyes darted from me to my lawyer, then to the other board members, her face slowly draining of color. She tried to interrupt, to deny, to deflect, but my lawyer expertly shut her down, calmly presenting more damning evidence with each of Sarah's protests. The climax arrived when I revealed the total sum she had embezzled. It was staggering, enough to cripple a smaller company, and certainly enough to warrant severe legal consequences. The board members, many of whom had seen their own investments dwindle under Sarah's management, looked at her with a mixture of shock and disgust. Sarah finally broke. She started yelling, accusing me of fabricating evidence, of being an old bitter woman trying to ruin her. She even tried to invoke Michael's name, claiming she was just carrying on his work. It was a desperate, pathetic attempt to regain control, but it was too late. I looked her dead in the eye, my voice as cold as ice. You took advantage of my grief, Sarah. You systematically dismantled my son's legacy and robbed his company. You called me just the cleaner because you thought I was insignificant, irrelevant. But let me remind you, I built this company from the ground up, scrubbing toilets and making beds, with my own 2 hands. And now, I'm taking it back. By the end of the meeting, the board had voted unanimously to remove Sarah from all her positions, effective immediately. They also initiated legal proceedings to recover the stolen funds and press criminal charges. It was a clean sweep. Sarah was escorted out of the building by security, her protests falling on deaf ears. The public disgrace was immense. The news of her embezzlement quickly spread through the local business community, and her reputation was irrevocably shattered. As for me, the aftermath was a long and arduous process of rebuilding. I reinstated the loyal employees Sarah had fired, bringing back the heart and soul of the Haven. I oversaw the reversal of her cost-cutting measures, bringing back the quality and personal touches that had defined our brand. The hotel slowly began to recover, regaining their reputation for excellence. It wasn't easy, and the pain of losing Michael still lingered, a constant ache in my heart. But seeing the Haven flourish again, seeing Michael's legacy restored, brought a sense of peace and purpose back into my life. I went back to walking the halls, greeting guests, and sometimes, yes, even helping out with the cleaning, not as just the cleaner, but as the owner, the founder, the woman who fought for what was right. So, this whole messy saga taught me a profound lesson. Never underestimate the quiet strength of someone you've dismissed. The old lady, who was just the cleaner, was the one who built an empire, and she was the one who tore it back from the clutches of greed and betrayal. If you've ever felt underestimated, if you've ever had someone try to take what's yours, then like this video, and let me know I'm not alone. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of justice, revenge, and unexpected comebacks, because sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should fear the most. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comment section below. I'll see you all in the next story.